You are listening to Bootstrap Farmer Radio.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Nick and Brandon in Portland, Oregon, with Amber Holland of the Portland Farmers Markets.
Correct.
And if you could, we've met a couple of times, a couple of years ago at the Intense Market. It's been a while, so don't know each other too well, but I knew that when we were up here, I wanted to find you, and I did. So thank you very much for accommodating us and giving us a place to sit down here. But if you can kind of give people your background and what's going on up here.
Sure. So I'm the operations director for Portland Farmers Market, and we run 6 markets in the Portland area. I've been doing this for 12 years, and it's probably the weirdest career I could have imagined, but I love it. I love what we do for Oregon's agriculture and small business development, community gathering. And happy to be here.
The reason I really wanted to talk to you was because of the amount of markets that you guys have. I've been to, I think, half of them over the last couple of years. And they're no shit markets. I mean, they're big markets that bring in a bunch. And there's bigger ones and there's smaller ones. Yeah. I can't imagine the kind of logistical stuff that must go on there. So how do you guys go about setting up a market or maintaining a market that's already been there, working with the neighborhoods, working with the surrounding neighbors and all that?
Just like our growers are seasonal, so is our work that we do for the market. So kind of basically October through March is all planning time. So we're pulling permits, we're opening application time, we're curating for markets, we're orienting brand new vendors, and we're getting brand new businesses ready to sell at market. Then May hits, and it's all markets going, and we're opening markets. We're reaching the public and letting them know it's there. And we're really focused on being at market and really focused on vendor sales at that point.
I got the feeling that Lentz was a true farmers markets for producers, and then the Sunday market, there's a lot of crafts and additional things. There's a good food truck court. At least there was a couple of years ago when I was here. So different markets have different flavors and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we are food and farms only, so any kind of craft that we may have in the market is derived directly from the farm. So we have a lamb producer who brings in and spins their own wool. We've got beeswax candles, that sort of thing. But any other craft we leave for the Portland Saturday market, where we are oftentimes mixed up, but they do a great job working with crafters that do all of their own creations, and so we can stay out of it. It's great.
And we're pretty close to Washington. How far are people coming in to your markets to vend?
Oregon and Washington are the states that we accept vendors from. So as far as Eastern Oregon, which can be a 5-hour drive, and then I'd say the furthest in Washington, probably 3 hours. 3-hour drive is about the furthest that people come in.
I noticed that at all the markets that you have, there's typically an information booth, and you guys actually have staff, and they're very engaged. There seems to be a lot of pamphlets. What kind of questions? I mean, I can't imagine the amount of questions, and given that grin, I know there's some doozies, but how are these volunteers trained to handle these questions at the market where they could be asked anything and everything?
Yeah. For the first year, we hope that most of the questions that our staff and volunteers are getting are things like, where's the ATM, where's the bathroom? Number one question, where's the bathroom? Then we get a little more into the complicated questions of asking where a specific vendor is without knowing the name of the vendor, which is my favorite game. I was here 3 years ago. It was a guy. He had a beard. He sold some cheese, and he also had something. And it's like, name that vendor. And it's so fun because part of the work that we do is getting to know these vendors and getting to know their products. And then hearing the way that a shopper describes this vendor and market is really fun. Other than that, we get all kinds of questions. Most of our downtown markets really draw in a big tourist group. PSU specifically, our flagship market, Portland State University, tourists from all over the world come and have questions about what it takes to set up a market, where all of these vendors are coming from, and they get into a lot more details of wanting to know about what we're doing. In those questions, we use software that we have access to all of our vendor information, and a lot of that is published on our website, so we can kind of direct folks to where the source of the information is coming from. So volunteers aren't required to know everything about all 200 vendors. But most of what we do is just customer service people. Our job is to make sure that shoppers know how to get what it is that they need. They have a place to go if something's not quite right, and that our markets are truly accessible. So it is part of our policy with staff and volunteers that if a person comes to the market with some sort of physical limitations or any kind of limitation where they might need some assistance shopping, it is our job to drop what we're doing and make sure that that person can buy the products that they want to buy.
PSU also has something very unique that I've never seen before. I know that you had a hand in, particularly proud of, and that's the dining situation.
Yeah.
and the no paper. If you could tell people what I'm referring to, and we can kind of get into that because it's a pretty unique situation.
Yeah, we're pretty proud of it. It's called durable dining, and it's a program that we brought into our markets when commercial composting was restricted to just food scraps only. For a while, our vendors were buying the expensive compostable wares, and we were feeling really good about diverting our trash into compost. And when that went away, we realized that all that trash was coming back. And we're talking about 30 bags of trash in 5 hours.
There's a lot of food vendors there.
And a lot of to-go cups and coffee cups and other garbage that's coming in. So with durable dining, we require hot food vendors to offer a for here option, which means a durable plate, fork, and cold cup. We're still working on hot cups. And what we found is that we reduced our trash by 60%. So the vendors, they own their own plates, bowls, cups, all of it. They take it home, they wash it. So it's pretty low maintenance for the market, but the impact to our waste is pretty significant. But yeah, there's a learning curve with it. With tourists that come into the market, they're pretty confused about why they have this plate and what they're supposed to do with it. But our regulars are pretty savvy.
So I'm going to have pictures on this from where I took them, but there's an area where you can, after you get done eating, you take your plates, scrape the scraps, and there's places to put these things, and explain to people how the vendors get their plates back and their forks back, because I did like that particular part.
Well, that would be staff schlepping it back to them. So we take and we return their plates and all of their wares to them, and all but one. So throughout the day, we'll keep things tidy and keep those going back, and we leave the one big plate because people want to do the right thing, and they don't want to read a lot of information about how to do that. So if you show them what that's supposed to look like, that one plate, and they have a plate that looks just like it, they'll set it down on it.
Yeah.
As long as you keep it looking the way you want it to look, people will follow suit. It's an interesting sociological study.
It's a beautiful market. It's about 4 blocks. It's kind of in a promenade, but it's about 4 blocks worth. But when I was there was people playing violins and people hanging out on the lawn and eating, and there was food going on and just massive walls of food. But then there's also some distillers and some wineries. How long has distillers been able to set up and offer samples around here?
I want to say it's 5 or 6 years or so. The OLCC allowed the sale of hard alcohol at farmers markets some years ago, and yeah, it's been good. It's been good.
We've heard that the average ticket sale, once these people get there, goes way up through the roof, because now all of a sudden they're buying a higher priced item and they can get more of the things that they want at market. Do you see them doing any type of collaborations with any farmers as far as, hey, here's your garnish, or here's the berries that you can pair up with these things?
Yeah, in a couple different ways, really. Our Kenton market, which is one of our younger markets in North Portland, we have a street closure, and in order to have any alcohol vendors there at all, we have to pull a permit that allows for that. So we've kind of endearingly named that market Boozy Kenton, because it's a small market and those permits are not cheap. So we encourage our booze vendors there to really sample cocktails, and we purchase all of the produce so that they can put together a cocktail demonstration.
They're not open today, are they?
They're not. They are actually open today. Today is a Boozy Kenton day, too. And then with what we've noticed over the last 5 or 6 years with bringing alcohol vendors in, the very first ones, and they're still with us because it's a successful outlet for them, it was all non-locally sourced grains and products. local businesses, small businesses right here in Portland, distilling in Portland, all of those things were truly happening. But what we've noticed in the last year or two is that our booze vendors are really rising to the occasion and sourcing grains from Oregon. They're infusing their alcohols with different Oregon fruits. And at this point, I'd say over half of our liquor vendors are really tied to Oregon agriculture, either in their products, in the actual flavors of their alcohols, or in the actual creation of gin specifically. We've got a gin vendor brand new this year. And yeah, they're sourcing their grain from Eastern Oregon, which is pretty cool.
Is that available because the farmers have met that demand, or was that always available to them as the distillers?
I think the outlet for the micro distilleries has really shifted. You used to go to the liquor store and you get this big wall of these nationally produced alcohols, and you kind of pick the one based on where the price point was. And now you go to the farmer's market and you're able to sample these artisanal alcohols. And so the alcohol vendors have really seen like the connection between where they're at and what they're, and the consumer that they're relating with. To miss the boat on not bringing in fruit to your alcohols or kind of making those a little bit more distinct would be a mistake, I think. Yeah, people want more than just a grain vodka. They want grain vodka infused with peaches and strawberries and apples. And we have one vendor who does an apple brandy that's pretty incredible. But turns out you can make alcohol just about out of anything, which I think is fun. Yeah, we grow a lot of hops.
About that,
Yeah.
I think I made some alcohol out of my orange juice accidentally.
I was at Union Square Farmers Market in New York 3 weeks ago, and one thing I've never seen before was it was a potato farm that made their own. They made 2 different kinds of vodkas, but they were selling it in just under 3-ounce containers, so travelers could take it home. Because the last time when Brandon and I met, first time I bought a bottle, well, it cost me more to ship it home than it did because we don't do the carry-on thing. But for her to know that there's going to be so many travelers coming through and to sell it in a size that could accommodate that, it was very nice.
Absolutely, so, yeah, smart.
Yeah,
smart.
Yeah, good. I think being so aware and coming to the convenience factor of everything, which is what I want to talk to you about next, is what type of added value products that are serving the needs of people that may not want to cook, or generations that are coming up that may not have the culinary skills to take a pile of beets and these types of vegetables home and actually do something with them. I mean, do you have hummus vendors and sauce vendors and stuff like that?
Sure. Our markets are curated at about 75% farms and 25% everyone else. The trend that we've noticed with farms, though, we've got a food bill that allows farms to produce value-added products on their property without needing a commercial kitchen, which is really fun. It started as the pickle bill, then there was a bakery bill, and now it's the farm direct bill. So we have seen, and the farmers will use somebody with more of a skill set towards creating those value-added products than just making something and hoping it sells. They can use co-packers, but essentially what it does is you can do something with that abundance. So last year you planted the same amount of tomatoes as this year, but you got twice as many. What are you going to do with them? So there's some flexibility for farms to really create their own value-added products, which allows them to have more diversity of product throughout the season, which is great. Otherwise, we're seeing a lot of people doing a lot of really interesting things with value-added products. We have a tempeh vendor that started with us this year. Tempeh is supposed to be made out of soy, right? Well, we don't grow soy, and people don't really like soy here. He makes tempeh out of mushrooms, for example, or other kinds of vegetables. Still got that tempeh texture. It's still got that fermentation going on, but they skip the soy and did something more interesting that can be sourced locally.
The diversity of the markets up here are between the flowers and the nuts and the stone fruits and then all just phenomenal vegetables. And then at PSU, I noticed that there was just one lady doing just lavender, all kinds of different lavender, and that was her whole thing, and that was such a beautiful card.
Yeah.
And the amount of effort that I see that goes into the displays, particularly at that market, it's pretty phenomenal. I mean, to me, it's some of the best I've ever seen, no matter where we've gone. And I think that that's one of those examples of you come to a market like this that's this well ran, surrounded by people that really know and care about what they're doing, kind of elevates the entire market. Is there any type of training programs that you guys do for the vendors, or any type of get-togethers or meetups?
We do a new vendor orientation as a vendor is joining us for the first year. And that is really a chance to give them a baseline of what marketing would be, how to communicate with your shoppers. And then from there, it's more one-on-one based on the product, kind of the display. It's not uncommon for me to walk a market with a vendor and kind of point out different ways to make yourself more visible. Placement of signage is huge. And in my position, it's kind of all I see is how people's display is and how shoppers are engaging with the booth. But when you're behind the booth, when you're in the booth, you don't necessarily see what I see. And so I do a lot more one-on-one after our new vendor orientation to make sure that people understand there is a best practices at the market for getting people to engage with you rather than just walking right by or not seeing you at all.
That's such a catch-22 because as a producer, it's hard to get out and have that experience. I mean, we're fortunate enough that we can get out and we can go see all these places, and we make it a point when we travel that that's what we do. We go to farmers markets, but for people that are producing year-round, small scale, it's hard to get out and see, like you said, from the other side or experience it as a customer or consumer. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to put those shoes on, right? It's hard to step back, but as you're planning your farmers market, that's what we have this Facebook group for. We had someone ask, show a photo. Here's my first market stand. What do you guys think? And everyone gets to chime in. So at least now that people, even if they can't get out and they're stuck behind their booth, that during the week we can kind of explore through the internet, kind of help each other out. So it's more of a national support group.
Yeah. Well, and the vendors themselves, in my experience, they aren't necessarily the best folks to address how to engage with the shoppers, because it's up to market management to manipulate the shoppers to do what we want them to do. If we want them to go into an area that is not particularly active, we may activate it with something. So we are constantly figuring out how to use our market space so that all of our spaces are visible and accessible to shoppers. So with that in mind, we are the best ones to say, hey, we are forcing people to walk down this walkway here. We have blocked off this way specifically so they will walk by your booth. What that does is creates congestion. And so if you've only got a banner in the back of your booth, nobody will see that. But if you've got a flag out the front of your booth, it's a completely different story. And the vendors don't necessarily... They wouldn't pick that up because they don't know what it is that we are trying to do with shoppers.
And a lot of it's basic retail management. Like if you go into a big box store and there's end caps and you're following people through the cashier line and there's all those things to buy there at the end that have a high value, have high market value. I mean, that's what it's all about. All that stuff's applicable.
Do you plan out your vendors? Do you kind of like have all your vendors listed and then your template for the market and saying, these should probably go here to try to keep that flow? Is that how you plan it out?
Well, we use kind of an anchor produce or anchor vendor scenario. So if we've got a vendor that we know on their own will draw a crowd and they're good to go, we'll kind of place them at the caps of the market. Those are our end caps, right? They get people to the aisle. And in order to get to those popular vendors, you've got to walk by a bunch of brand new vendors that may be in just one tent. The vendors that are in a single tent are probably the hardest to make visible because it's a single booth and they all look the same. When you've got a vendor that takes up 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 stalls, you're going to see them. And we're going to put them in a place where people want to move in that direction. Again, just kind of manipulating the shoppers to move around. We do like to put bread and cheese together. We do like to put vegetables and we plan it out so that you're not walking down the line sampling and trying to sample chocolate at the same time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
We get that feedback from vendors, which neighbors they pair well with.
Good.
And I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to ask, how are vendors pulling their own crowd? How are they attracting their own people? And then in turn, how do you guys know that they're so good at that? I mean, obviously there's going to be lines, but how are you guys picking those anchor vendors, and what are they doing to draw their own crowd?
Well, sampling goes a long ways at the farmers market. Whether you're selling a beet, for example, and still much of the population is unsure what to do with beets or feels that they're going to be a labor-intensive item to take home, or social media is a good way to let people know what you're doing. Our consumers pretty educated here in Portland, so it's important to let our consumers know exactly what it is that you're doing so that they're willing to support you. So whether it's a farm that does everything with no plastic and no greenhouses, or a farm that's certified organic, or a farm that is intentionally uncertified because that cost of the certification will be passed on to the consumer, and they're making a statement that we don't do that. So whatever it is, that messaging is really important. And then at market, it's all about signage, letting people know what you have, kind of putting your sexiest items out front, and engaging with shoppers. Especially with new vendors, those that are represented by the owners are much more likely to succeed than those that are sending staff. People do support you, but they also want to know what it is that they're supporting. And if they know that this is a dream of yours that you've made come true, and that you've got little kids at home counting on this to work, there's a story there. And it's grocery shopping. That's what farmers markets are. It's not that exciting, except that it can be very exciting. So kind of taking that grocery shopping experience and making it something that's truly value-based and fun and exciting. That's why alcohol sells so well at the farmers markets, because you get to try it all. By the time you actually make a decision, you're a little looser.
You're swayed to do so.
So what are you seeing from farmers as far as the better ones in telling their story and connecting with consumers? When I'm walking through a farmer's market, I'm usually giving a quick evaluation as I'm walking down the aisles, and I'm always looking ahead a little bit because I want to know before I walk right by them whether I'm interested or not. So there's a small opportunity there for them to connect with me in their messaging and their signage and the way that they're presenting themselves. So maybe some overall tips or just some things that you've seen that, what's something people are doing that if you're the first time at that market, that when you walk down, you're captivated, you're brought in.
I'd say it's in displays and signage, and we've talked before about photos of farms and things like that. And the photos of farms can be really powerful if you're selling something like meat. It is very hard to make a cooler look good. Mm-hmm. But if you've got some photographs of the animals on your farm, suddenly you're connecting to your food in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. Otherwise, it's in display. So what are the booths that you see when you are 60 feet away? You see those vertical displays that are bringing in multiple different colors. So one of our vendors who's really good at sending displays, they've got kind of racks that lift up so the display itself is about 4 feet tall. And they don't just put all their chard over here and all their tomatoes over here and all their carrots over here. It's chard, carrots, tomatoes, chard, carrots, tomato, and it's in design. And you can't help but just stop. I mean, more people are taking photos at our markets than they are purchasing.
Sure. We've heard that multiple times.
Because these displays are so beautiful and they're creative. So I would say what can make you stand out is know what you're good at. If you're the farmer and you're growing vegetables and that's what you're passionate about, be there to answer questions and to talk about what you're doing, and find someone else who's really good at that marketing, because it will set you apart. And everybody in the market has kale. What are you going to do to make your kale really stand out? You're going to grow different varieties, and you're going to set it up in a way that makes it more attractive. It's not about pricing. Nobody cares if you're selling it for $2 or $2.50. If you've given them an experience, that 50 cents will never matter. But if you're not giving them an experience, then maybe they are looking for the cheapest kale on the market.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. something we try to hammer home quite often. So.
It is really true. It is really true.
And how much effort went into growing all that kale, all that blood, sweat, and tears, and then how much effort went into setting up the marketing, which is going to take it from $2 to $2.50, and that last 50 cents is all profit.
It's all profit, right?
That it can't be underrated.
That's right. That's right. Well, and how much work you put into the field. Unfortunately, nobody sees that. What they see is your display. If you worked your tail off all week long and you made a mistake and harvested Thursday morning to sell on Saturday and you show up with wilty produce, nobody cares that you weeded all of that by hand.
And nobody thinks about the planning that even goes into ordering the seeds and how long are we going to germinate these things for. It's a much... I always want people to really think about how much time you actually have even before you plant invested into this year's harvest. So, stamps are more 50 cents.
And the shopper doesn't necessarily want to hear about how hard you worked or how much you think you're worth, or you don't want to be too preachy, but at the same time, what you're doing is really important and really valuable. And shoppers are there because they know that. They just need a little bit more information to know that you're the best choice.
I think a good display shows confidence in your own product, so if you have your display and there's not much there and it's all just thrown together, like, you kind of have this spidey sense that person takes that attitude back home to the farm with them, and so there's a little, maybe more of a mistrust there.
Absolutely. And maybe it's just me because I've been in this for too long, but I won't buy anything from a vendor that doesn't have a tablecloth on my table.
Thank you.
I'm insulted by that lack of effort. Which I think is so superficial, but at the same time, like, I don't show up to work with dirty clothes. I mean, sometimes I guess I do, but I don't start that way. I try to show up and present myself in a way that is,
if you have a business, have a business. Treat it like a business.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're all looking for reasons to buy and also reasons not to buy.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's a great way of putting it. And the other thing that I want to say about that is look around at what people aren't doing. Don't be afraid to do something outside of the norm. We have a vendor that we started working with this last winter. We're a year-round farmers market, and we hear from people all the time, well, there's not going to be any produce there. Well, that's 100% not true. In this region, we can grow things year-round, even outdoors, so it's not even just all greenhouses. And this particular vendor, certified organic. They've got chickens and eggs and also a variety of produce. And they have decided, because the opportunity is there, they've decided to focus on winter crops. So they take a little break in the summer, which is impossible to even imagine. But then they show up really strong in the fall, and they stay strong all year, all winter long with chicken, produce, maybe some value-added things that they created over the summer. And they've got a really, really nice showing, and that's where they make their money, and that's where they really show up, because nobody else has anything like that. Farmers they do have it, but it's either coming out of a greenhouse, which a lot of consumers are really questioning how much plastic they want involved with the production of their food, or they're just kind of tired and they've got kind of half the display that they would normally have because they're expecting half of the shopper base that they would normally have. But these guys, that's where they make it happen, and they grow as much as they can for the winter markets. And it's neat. It's really cool.
They know what they're good at.
Yep. And they know what other people aren't really focusing their efforts on.
Yeah.
And that's where they go. If everyone's growing lettuce, find a variety that you don't see in the market. Find something different and unique. Some of the tomatoes.
There's plenty of greens out there to grow.
There's plenty of greens out there. Don't keep growing the same kale. We got a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. There's a few things that we're having to focus on, and one of those is microgreens. How's microgreen production doing up here? And is it coming from vendors that specialize in that, or is it part of a program? And is it being asked for by the consumers?
Yes, asked for by the consumers, but not even at our Portland State Market, not in enough volume to support a specific microgreen grower. And we have played with that over the years. We've invited a couple of microgreen growers into our markets. They last a couple of seasons. Maybe they do okay. It's not enough to sustain them. It's nice because you don't need a lot of space. But again, we've got a year-round growing season, and so if there was a time of the year where there was nothing to grow, we think microgreens might do much better, but it's never really the case. So with our growers that are doing a diversity of produce, they definitely grow microgreens. There is money in it. There is a reason to do it.
As part of a larger program.
Yeah.
And so you think that because there's such a wide variety here, that microgreens don't do as well on their own? Because there are a lot of microgreen growers out there just sell microgreens in different markets that seem to be doing just fine.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. We kept thinking that it would work. It's Portland. It should work. And a lot of them found restaurant accounts, and restaurants want them because they're so perishable. It's also Portland, though, so I wonder how many people are growing their own microgreens or sprouting their own seeds and that kind of thing.
I often wonder about some of the stuff I do. It's maybe just ahead of the curve. Like we're almost too early to market some of the stuff we do.
Yeah.
Because it's out that far out of the box. So let's contrast microgreens with herb productions. Who out there is just focusing on herbs, and what's that looking like?
Yeah, again, we don't really have any herb-specific vendors. We do have folks that are growing a specific herb. They are creating value-added products out of that. So for the first time this year, we have welcomed a couple of CBD vendors. So this is industrial hemp. This is not cannabis. There's a very big difference. And the CBD vendors are bringing industrial hemp to smoke. They're bringing tinctures to add to whatever you want to take straight. Different salves and lotions and things like that can be applied topical. So when it is a specific, like we only grow this one product, the product options for the consumer are pretty wide. I would love to have an herb grower, someone who focused on just herbs, and I think that sort of specialty would do well. I always think these things to myself, but maybe there's no money in it, and that's why we don't have anyone doing it. But mostly our herbs are coming from the diverse farms that are growing all kinds of stuff, and herbs is one of those things. One of our growers has been pretty cutting edge in trying to grow things that don't traditionally grow here, like Meyer lemons and ginger, and lemongrass grows pretty well here, those kinds of things. But what I'd like to see is more culturally relevant herbs grown here. I don't know if there's limitations in the climate, or if it's just someone hasn't really put it together that might make some money. But I think that would be a really neat product to have and very unique.
Is there a point where a vendor might show up, they go through the vetting process and they actually get in, but they just miss the mark and wash out? How do you know that that's going to come on down the line, or what always happens to make that happen, other than no tablecloth?
If you don't have a tablecloth on opening day, you're probably not going to make it. No, I would say that there's some really great ideas out there, and I think the savvy business owner is prepared to not make any money for a couple of years. If you turn a profit in the first 2 years, then that is something to celebrate. If you have a product or a business that is growing over those 2 years, that's success. And a lot of people think that they need to make that, or that they're going to make a livable wage in the first couple of years of being in business, and that is tough. It is really tough.
Really important to mention. That's across all industries too.
Yeah. Especially with food, you just don't know what the climate's going to be. You don't know what your competition is going to be. You don't know what people are willing to pay for things if it's a brand new product. I had a $6 croissant the other day. It was worth every penny, but that's a risk. A $6 croissant that's outside the norm.
Yeah.
So I'd say, other than that, it's when the owner doesn't have that owner or owners. When it's a single owner, you are expected to know everything and know how to do everything. And that's not necessarily what you're looking to do. Maybe you went into business for yourself because you're not really that fond of people. Well, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You're going to have to find someone who's willing to partner with you and to help you sell your product. And it's not enough to hire staff. You need a partner. You need somebody that can really sell your product and talk about the production, the growing of it, why it's special, why it's worth what it is. And those vendors that either have that skill set, or they recognize they don't and they find somebody to help them do that. Those are the vendors that we're confident will be successful.
do you see those successful ones making pivots and changes over the years to, you see them kind of figuring it out and adding product or possibly taking product away that didn't work, and they're niching down to what's actually working versus hanging on to these pipe dreams that they may have had?
Right. With growers and farmers, we see expansion almost across the board. They start with one product and then slowly they start bringing other products as it makes more sense, and they gain access to capital and they start having those relationships with shoppers and they get the confidence to want to start something. For value-added vendors, I would say the food artisan vendors, there's definitely some expansion to make their products stand out a little bit more. So a hot sauce vendor will eventually graduate to making chili oil, for example, just to have that different option. But you don't buy hot sauce and chili oil. You buy one or the other. So it's really to bring in maybe more shoppers who want something a little bit different. But at the end of the day, the value-added vendor is known for something. They are going to be known for that hot sauce, or they are going to be discovered by a grocery store for that hot sauce. And that, so it's a little bit of both. You'll see a little bit of expansion, and then you'll see some products drop off because they're not making the cut.
I guess there's the balance there. Like, you want to be known for something, right, but that guy might have doubled the size of his market by having that extra one. Right. But yeah, you want to be known for something, but not everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So given and I hope we have a little fun with this question, a lot of tourists coming through here. Yeah. What's the most outlandish question you had from somebody that's not from the area that's just totally, I mean, it is a little culture shock coming up here in some sure. ways. So the person that may not typically shop at the farmer market that comes up and asks that question, there's got to be a couple of good stories in there.
Well, I don't want to offend anyone.
No, listen, we're talking to farmers here, so
yes. They're not listening. They're long gone.
Yeah. Okay, if I had to, I could rate them my top three.
Three people through.
Do you have any bananas? I have a lot of fun with that question. It's hard not to be sarcastic with that question. My favorite vendor question that was reported to me, a cherry vendor, orchard. Do you have any seedless cherries? And then my ultimate favorite question of all time, is this every day? And I don't know why that one gets me, but it's just like, this were every day. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
They just don't get it.
No.
It takes so much out to schlep that stuff up and set up, right, and to tear down. Mm-hmm. That's where brick and mortars come in.
That's right. That's right.
That just kind of gives you a little bit of an insight, though. Like the average Joe's insight, they just kind of expect everything to be as easy in there, and
they're programmed since birth.
And at the end of the day, it is sort of our job to meet them as far as we can, and not just expect them to.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bet. We did a shopper survey last year. Part of our strategic plan and board engagement was to find out from shoppers what it is that they wanted and what we could do to kind of bring more value to the shoppers that we already have. I've had some interesting conversations with other market managers that have been in this for a long time. And your shopper base doesn't change. You don't get more shoppers. They found that about 3% of your population is going to shop the farmer's market, and it's going to stay there. So some will come, some will go. Another part of that study was that a regular market shopper self-identified as going once a month. To go to a farmer's market once a month, they considered themselves a regular farmer's market shopper. I thought that was interesting. So what we have here is you can try and get people that aren't. You can try, and we do. We've got social media and text message reminders and tabling and outreach and posters and flyers and name it, we do it. Yep. Or you can try and get that once a month shopper, and you can try and get that once a month shopper to come 2 or 3 times a month. Yep. And the opportunity with your existing shopper base is much lower hanging fruit. So we did a shopper survey to find out what it was that our existing shoppers wanted to see. And it was they want to see it at grocery store. They want to see it more frequent. They want to see longer hours, and they wanted to see a buyer program or some sort of punch card or something. Yeah, they wanted.
I got a punch card for you.
Yeah, we did it. We didn't do it at our larger markets, but the markets where we were trying to grow that shopper base, we brought in a frequent shopper program.
Is there actually anything that can be done there? Because, that once a month thing, and they're considering that, it's almost like I'm checking the box.
Uh-huh.
I support my local farmers. I'm checking the box. And that's just, look, we're humans. I mean, we've exposed ourselves to that. But is there anything that can actually be done that you guys are maybe working on to sort of try to meet that in the middle?
Yeah, I'd say our buyer program, so we put some money towards it and said if you come 4 times during the season, any 4 times, we'll give you $5 to spend in the market, which is a pretty good incentive. This is at one of our smaller markets, so we're definitely looking to grow that shopper base, and it's also a lot of new people in the neighborhood, and so that's a good. This is not so many, so we can afford it. Other things, it's really about the messaging and developing our key messages to show consumers what it is that they're supporting and to really demonstrate what it is that they're supporting. Doing profiles on farms really gets a lot of likes, and I don't know if that translates into a lot more purchasing, but people really are connected to their growers and connected to the land their food is coming from. So when they get to find out something unique or exciting about the farmer, that they've been here for 20 years and that this is their sole income and whatever, that is inspiring to those shoppers to want to come and spend money with those vendors.
Do you do any type of paid advertising through Facebook, Instagram, or maybe some of the older traditional things?
We do. We have a communications manager, so my knowledge of it is pretty limited, but I know that we pay for advertisements. We tend to focus our outreach on our neighborhood markets, and that's for us. Our neighborhood markets are important markets because they can be during the week, and they can give growers a midweek outlet for their products. They're also smaller and more accessible, so they can be really great places for people to launch their business from as well.
One thing I've seen that Nick does, and even my local farmers market does, is they do Facebook Lives, or what Nick will do if he's going to a market, he'll take pictures of what he created, put up $5 on Facebook and saying, this is what you're going to be seeing tomorrow, come out and see us.
Yeah.
That seems to be pretty effective and very simple to do. It takes you, 30 seconds to do that?
I've got the best luck with putting an event, because when you put it in an event and then you add the market that you're going to, or today, my people are at the downtown splash pad, like community park, well, I put them as a co-host, so it automatically goes to their page as well. So I get double the exposure, and then the notifications go up without it having to be paid. So it's working well for now. We'll see what happens this week, kind of thing. So
I would say with those kinds of things, try it. I mean, they're not particularly expensive. They're a great way to get your name out there. From my perspective, I don't have results from what we do because we track our markets, but we don't know if it was the paid newspaper.
Yeah, it'd be really hard to figure
out. Or if it was the Facebook Live video that we had for opening bell. But vendors would know because they would be advertising their own business and directly would have those consumers coming into their booths and saying, oh, I saw your Facebook event, or oh, I saw you.
See, that's how I judge it, because that's what people almost come up without even asking, say, I saw it on Facebook, I saw this, I saw that. But that comes down to, well, we made the effort to put the picture up, or we made the effort for the video, and we're consistent with it. And I think a lot of people, a lot of farmers, misjudge the effectiveness of the ad. So my rule of thumb on my budget, if we're going to event, I'll boost it for the sale price of my most valuable item. So with the bowls today, I did a $10 boost because I know if I just get one more, then that purchase of that conversion is going to yield later on because they're going to tell somebody they're going to come back. So if I can buy that customer for $10 once, I'll see it again later on. That's how we've grown over the years. So if I spend $10, I don't expect to get $1,000 out of it, but it's playing that long game of converting that one new person per week. That's it. That's all I want to do.
That's a good point. a bootstrap farmer, I mean, that's a big thing. Customer lifetime value. It's like you'd be okay breaking even on the first time because you know the next time, because if you give them a good service, they'll be back. And so that's playing the long game.
Absolutely, but be ready for it. I will say, as the advice when you're going to advertise something, you know what you're doing. You put this thing is going on sale. You're going to bring extra though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't want to run out. If you put something for sale that you just don't have enough of, or you advertise something that you're not going to be able to have for the entire duration of the market, then you've set yourself up for the opposite of drawing that lifetime customer, and you have disappointed someone at this point. And you can't always predict. Sometimes we sell out, but selling out even an hour before the market is over is a loss of opportunity there. And a lot of people want to do that because they want to develop that sort of frenzy in the beginning of the market to make sure that they sell out, to make sure that they're selling everything that they bring so they're not wasting anything and they're getting maximum dollar. But if you can go home with just a little bit of product,
Good balance.
it's a really good balance and it's worthwhile because you'll see that little bit of product that you go home with kind of get lower and lower, and you just have to start bringing more because you're making sales in the entire market. So if you're going to do something, if you're going to advertise yourself, you really make sure that you're able to serve all of the customers that are coming to your booth that day. Otherwise, you won't gain a customer. You will lose interest. They will stop following you, or they'll continue following you, but they won't
Go somewhere else and follow up with someone else.
Because they may just not want to wake up early on Saturday. Because God knows what they're going to do. We always like to ask, and especially for people that are just starting out, what as a market manager, what do you want farmers to know about your role, the things that you guys have to deal with, like pulling permits that farmers never think about? I mean, you guys are obviously juggling the map of your market and where everybody's being put and all that kind of thing. What do you want them to know about your role and how they could make it not easier on you, but not be so
Able to understand what they're going through a little better. So
yeah? How can a farmer help you with your job and not hinder you? And then that means that two-way street really helps you guys, it helps the farmer, and it helps the public. So what can they do to not be a thorn? Unintentional.
Well, don't be a thorn, first of all.
Yeah.
Try that. No, know that market manager's job is relentlessly putting out fires, and that is what we do a lot. So as I've been doing this for long enough, I've been able to predict what those fires might be, and I can get ahead of them. But I'm also not going to talk about the fires I'm putting out on behalf of our market and our vendors. So know that if you're not hearing from us, it's likely because we are fighting the city for what we believe is rightfully ours, or really going to bat for our farms. I think the best thing that vendors can do is stay in communication with us about what their needs are, how things are going, and be proactive with their market managers. The saddest thing is when you have a vendor that withdraws from the market but never asks for help, or a vendor that is going home with half of their supply of eggs and doesn't say anything about it until it's now a real crisis. And I can't kick out a vendor that we've accepted because of oversaturation. If you tell me we're on the verge of oversaturation in a particular product, I will not bring that product in. But it's not always super obvious. I didn't know that you doubled your flock. I had no idea. So I brought in another egg vendor. You doubled your flock, and now you can't sell any of that because we brought in another vendor. So I would say the best thing that you can do is just let us know. If you're seeking additional land to grow new products, first of all, we need to know. But if you're seeking additional land to bring more of the same product, we don't require vendors to report that, but it would be in your best interest to say, we're going in this direction. Heads up. Market curation is a big deal, and it's a lot of what my job is, and I want to do a good job with it because putting out fires, I want to keep those fires from ever starting in the first place. So if you tell me what you need, I can better serve what your needs are. I oftentimes feel the us versus them with vendors and market management. We try to be as transparent and supportive as possible with the rules and regulations and the things that we enforce.
But
usually a really good reason for it too.
That's the thing. I think vendors just think those rules are out there, But oftentimes you're dealing with state and other regulations that you don't have any control over.
Right. And we trust you. We don't have control over. We don't inspect every ODA law and rule. We don't inspect all the county rules and licensing that you're required to have. So know that the trust is there for you to comply, and it's in your best interest, and you're serving the market. You're part of something bigger, and that is something that sometimes I just wish that vendors could understand, that you have to put in everything that you can in order to make sure that your sales opportunity is protected. It's not a given. Don't ever get lazy. Don't ever get complacent. Talk to your market manager and let them know exactly what it is that you need, and make sure that you have support before you put your resources into it.
Let's flip the coin. There's a lot of towns out there that have markets ran by different entities. If you were a farm that were trying to pick a market, what would you look for in a market manager, knowing what you know? I mean, or not, maybe not necessarily a market manager, but if you had to choose between two markets as a farmer, knowing what you know, how would you go about that?
There's a tool that I use, a market assessment tool, I believe it's called. It's not well named, but it rates different things. And for a market to be successful, yes, you want a wonderful market manager who knows how to curate a market that's not going to bring in too much of one product for the sake of filling out stalls. That is a mistake, and you lose kind of everyone in one year. But really, when you look at where's the location of the market, how have they addressed the needs of others? Is there parking? If your load-in is kind of a pain in the ass, but there's parking for shoppers, that's a win. If load-in is so easy, but it's in the middle of there's nothing around, or there's no parking for your shoppers, or there's no community to support this market, doesn't matter how easy your load-in is. So I would say we look at that market assessment tool. Has been really good as we've had to maybe shift markets or move markets. We look for visibility, because a lot of our shoppers are going to be accidental, and we know that. We look for access in general. So are we near a bus line? Are we near the MAX? Are we near public transportation? Is there parking for those that are driving? And if not, can we arrange something else? If you see a market that has found a solution to the lack of parking, very likely going to be good management. Or ability to expand.
I like that.
If you find a market that is in a giant parking lot and it's only halfway full, that could be a good sign that market management team believes that market will thrive and expand. And then just the demographic in general, who's moving into the area. Are these families? Do they have children where they're cooking meals at home? You're going to sell more produce there. We have tried to have a market in close in downtown, but near the Pearl District, and that's the hub for happy hours and single people with no kids, and the very social demographic. Not a lot of cooking there. And so that market has not been successful for farms in general. So those kinds of things, like do a little research on what that neighborhood is, what the average age of folks are, maybe what culture you're working with, to see if those products might have some value in them.
Okay, so we're gonna wind this down, but I'm gonna hit you with 3 very polarizing questions that either farmers are on the fence about, or we've seen other market managers. No right or wrong answer here.
Okay.
I just want
right or wrong. Except I bet there is.
I don't think there is. Well, there is a wrong answer for the first one I'm going to ask, but credit cards.
Ooh. To take or not to take?
To take or not to take. That's the question.
To take.
Absolutely.
To take. Yeah. I know it's a tough one. It slows things down. Technology is definitely getting better. Fees are going down. We will sell more product if we take credit cards.
That's part of meeting that need for convenience.
Yeah. I literally have $0 in cash on me right now. Market was put off by an ATM fee or something to that. Yeah. Or if I show up with $40 and I run out of money, find that thing that I really need, I use my card. I'm not going to think twice.
And for me, it still goes back to have a business.
Yeah.
It's just part of it. Mm-hmm. You can keep your high moral ground to yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If you want to stay debt free and you don't want to pay those charges, that's great. But your customers, don't take that away from them if that's how they choose to live their life.
We're moving to a cashless society, unfortunately. I know me and Nick probably not big fans of that, but it's just the truth.
Well, we can buy our good looks, but actually, we're starving. I guess that's the sign of the time. So, all right, next one.
Mm-hmm.
Dogs at the market.
Oof.
So, was that a oof or a woof?
A woof. I'm a dog owner, so first of all, know that I'm a very big animal lover. There are times and places where pets at the market can be a really good thing and a really valuable thing. We as market management do post whether pets are allowed or not. And if they are allowed, we post rules on what those pets are allowed to do.
And if they're not, people don't read it anyway.
You're right about that. And a little secret I'll tell you is we don't even have the authority to make that rule.
Oh,
so that's the tough part. Where in public spaces, you actually cannot, if you're open to the public, you cannot make up rules that aren't typically there.
I think that once a day when we're at market, you can count on 2 dogs getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually the smallest, frailest person with the biggest dog that can't control it.
Yeah, totally.
With some big burly dude with a chihuahua. And I'm like, how's this happen? Like every single time.
Both on retractor leashes.
Oh, yeah. Getting tangled up in a table, knocking stuff down.
By posting rules, though, we are allowed to ask somebody to not have a retractor leash, to clean up after their pet, to not let them near tables or under tables. But as soon as Portland State University and at our Shemansky market, we do not allow dogs on the market, which means, as I mentioned, that we don't actually have the authority to disallow them, but we ask people to not bring them. And the reason is for congestion purposes. We had one of these leashes wrap around an elderly woman's legs and take her down. And so when it's a matter of public safety, it's much easier to message that. Food safety, dogs are family members. They're not dirty. You just have a bath. It's too gray. But when it's a matter of public safety, there's too many people, too much congestion. Message could be easier. So we chose our 2 busiest markets to say that neighborhood markets, dogs are welcome.
Last question, and I'm on the fence on this one. Sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no.
I can't wait.
Yeah, music at the market.
100% yes.
We get yes or no, and it's either a hard yes or a hard no.
We know that the longer a shopper spends in the market, the more money they will spend. That is a
100%.
fact.
100%.
Yes. So if we give them some reason to stay, and it's not just music, it's kids' activities, it's chef demonstrations, it's community programs in general. You give a reason for a person to stay longer.
That's the reason I bought 2 booths, and one booth is not even a sales booth. We set up like a mini cafe where people can eat and drink and sit and rest, and that thing is full the entire market. And I was anxious to see what my market manager would say about it, but she loves it because she sees the line that we pull. We're right at an intersection, so there's a lot of a hub around that. A crowd attracts a crowd. So giving up that sales space for the convenience of our clients, especially given the food that we do, which is only added value products, it's worked out. So I like music at my market. Not 4 hours of bluegrass. I could do without that. A little bluegrass goes a long way.
Sure.
But I'm also a musician, and I know that if you're relying on free musicians, you get free music. Mm-hmm. Or if you're able to pay a little bit more, your quality certainly goes up. And I think from a musician standpoint, that's my issue is I know a lot of awesome acoustic rock groups that would fit the market that has the ability to wake up early on Saturday.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you are certainly limited to the types of music that come, especially in my area. We get a lot of gospel, which goes a long way, a lot of bluegrass, which goes a long way. And I like the diversity, but 4 hours of it could be a bit much.
Right. And for a vendor, you're not wrong. You are not wrong. That is a hard place to be when you can't get out of your booth, which is why I chose the manual side of farmers markets instead of vending side of farmers markets, because I can move away from that. But think about your shopper and the things that bring them to the market. And there is, you see little kids and old people dancing away to some music that's just captured them. those are lifelong farmers market shoppers now. They have had an experience that is, yes, feeding their family, but it has also brought joy to their life and brought their community together.
And that community building is what we're all trying to do. So it's time and a place.
Yep, and we've had some doozies. I'm not going to say we haven't had some real bad acts up there, but by and large, it is important. And we have gotten a little bit creative. We pay our ASCAP fees, which because of the number of markets that we do, we pay the maximum amount, which means that we can pretty much do anything. And I highly recommend for markets in general to figure out how to get that permission, whether it's to join forces with other markets and have an umbrella, to get the city to do it. I've heard some very unique approaches to the ASCAP fees, but we're allowed to stream music. So in markets where we're not pulling in the kind of talent that we want, our budget is what our budget is. We can't necessarily pay musicians much more. So we may say, this week we're going to stream music with our PA system, and next week we're going to be able to pay that band double because we didn't pay them for the prior week. So as market managers, it is our job to make sure that there is some sort of energy in the market that comes from music. But it doesn't have to just be whatever warm body will come in and play for the market.
Our band does about 40% cover, so we always turn in our set list, and I'm just shocked at sometimes the bigger bars that don't pay those fees. And listen, what that is for everybody that don't know, it's a way for the royalties to be paid to the original songwriters, musicians, or something like that. And for those people that may have a issue with those royalties being paid, that's still somebody's work. That's still somebody's intellectual property. And our band felt, as musicians who also do original music, and as a farmer who puts in a lot of time to their craft, we want people to get paid for what they do. So it's good on you for doing that, and even being aware of what that is. That's never come up.
Well, and we've talked to other market managers that can't afford those fees or choose not to pay them, and then you're working with only original songwriters, and that's sometimes it's amazing, and sometimes it's not.
Well, listen, thank you so much for meeting us. That's always challenging on the road to get all schedules to come up and then to get a place too. We've got a little background noise here, but it's good ambiance. And thank you for your time, and hope our paths cross again sometime.
Me too. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking any final thoughts. I always said nothing new.
Oh, wow, I got that vibe from you.
Sometimes you go, do you have any final thoughts?
I figured if you did it.
Now I just gotta cut that out. There's a final thought. Cool.
Yeah, that was
fun.
All right, so we're here at the Shemansky Farmers Market in Portland, Oregon. We just got done a podcast talking to the market manager, Amber, about this market. So it was kind of cool that we got to come see it right after we did that. And, I think me and Nick have been highly impressed with it. There's a lot of color here. It's still kind of early in the season, but there's a good variety. We saw some liquor. We saw all kinds of produce. A lot of berries are in season. I just had some kombucha and hummus. What I think we've seen most impressive is all the stands and the displays. I think everyone's always trying to make their display better. So hopefully, along with this video, Nick will start putting up some pictures of the displays that we saw. Definitely some cool stuff. And you add all the color of the produce that's in season right now. There's lines at every stand, and that's pretty cool. It's a really vibrant market here, and it's a lot of fun. So, that's it.